Milo is the smartest person in most rooms he walks into, and somehow he's also the loneliest. He can solve problems no one else in his office can touch, but he can't figure out why small talk at lunch leaves him drained, why he sometimes feels like he's watching conversations happen from slightly outside the glass. People assume high intelligence makes life easier. For a lot of genuinely high IQ people, it quietly makes certain parts of life harder in ways nobody warns them about. Here's what nobody tells you about the psychology of high intelligence. It's not that these people are simply gifted and everything downstream is smooth sailing. Intelligence changes how the brain processes almost everything. Not just problems on a test, but emotions, relationships, boredom, even sleep. And once you see the actual mechanics of it, a lot of things that look like arrogance or social awkwardness from the outside start making a very different kind of sense. Let's start with something researchers call asynchronous development, a pattern first studied extensively in gifted children, but that carries into adulthood in quieter ways. Cognitive ability, emotional maturity, and social skill don't always develop at the same pace in highly intelligent people. Someone might process abstract ideas years ahead of their peers, while their emotional regulation develops on a completely normal timeline. That gap creates a strange internal experience, feeling capable of understanding almost anything intellectually, while still struggling with the same everyday frustrations as everyone else, and often feeling more alone in that struggle, because people assume intelligence should cover everything. Here's the part that explains the isolation so many high IQ people describe. There's a concept called cognitive complexity mismatch. Essentially a gap in how much information two people are processing during the same conversation. If someone's brain is naturally drawing 5 or 6 connections where the person across from them is drawing one, ordinary conversation can start to feel oddly effortful, like constantly translating your own thoughts down into a simpler version before you're allowed to say them. This isn't superiority. It's closer to being fluent in a language. Most people around you speak more slowly, and constantly having to slow your own speech down to stay in sync. But wait. There's a deeper reason this often leads to actual loneliness, rather than just occasional awkwardness. Psychologists studying gifted populations have found that high IQ individuals frequently report lower satisfaction in casual social interactions. Not because they dislike people, but because surface-level conversation doesn't activate the same reward response for them that deeper, idea-driven conversation does. Their brain is essentially seeking a kind of stimulation that small talk structurally can't provide. Which means the isolation isn't really about being unable to connect. It's about a mismatch between the depth they're wired to seek and the depth most everyday interactions are built to offer. There's also something worth naming about anxiety here because it shows up disproportionately in this group. A well-documented pattern researchers call the intelligence-anxiety correlation suggests that people with higher verbal intelligence in particular tend to report higher rates of worry and rumination. The theory behind it is almost mechanical. The same capacity for connecting distant pieces of information, so useful for solving problems, doesn't switch off when there's no problem to solve. It gets pointed inward instead, running simulations of every possible outcome for a decision, replaying conversations for hidden meaning, anticipating consequences several steps further than most people naturally would. That's an asset in a crisis. It's exhausting as a default setting for daily life. Here's something that explains a pattern a lot of high IQ people notice but rarely name out loud: the tendency to downplay their own intelligence in social settings. This isn't false modesty. Psychologists sometimes describe it as strategic self-presentation, a learned behavior from years of watching genuine enthusiasm about ideas get met with discomfort, eye rolls, or the label know-it-all. Over time, a lot of highly intelligent people quietly learn to shrink their own visible thinking, just to keep social situations comfortable for everyone else, which creates its own strange loneliness. Being fully known by almost no one, because being fully seen kept costing something socially. Now here's a layer that reframes the whole pattern. High IQ people are often assumed to struggle with empathy, the stereotype of the cold genius. But research doesn't support that broadly. Many high IQ individuals actually experience heightened empathy, sometimes almost overwhelming in its intensity, because the same pattern recognition ability used on ideas gets applied to reading people too, picking up on subtle emotional cues others miss entirely. The coldness people sometimes perceive isn't a lack of feeling. It's often a person who has learned to manage an unusually intense internal world by keeping a controlled exterior, because letting all of it show tends to overwhelm both them and the people around them. Here's the part worth saying clearly, because a lot of highly intelligent people carry quiet confusion about this without ever naming it. Feeling isolated despite being capable, feeling exhausted by things that seem to come easily to others, feeling like you have to translate yourself constantly just to be understood. None of that means something is wrong with you. It usually means your brain is processing at a depth and speed that most everyday environments simply weren't built to match. And that mismatch, not any personal flaw, is what's actually creating the friction. The goal was never to dim your own thinking to make yourself easier to be around. It's finding the specific people and specific conversations that can actually meet you at the depth you're already operating at. Because those people exist, even if they're rarer to find than everyone else made it seem. If you've ever felt like the smartest person in the room, and also the loneliest, hit subscribe. And if you want to understand why some people trust an AI's advice more than a person's, even one who knows them well, that video's going to explain more than you expect. Click it.